Hi there and welcome at a new episode on TypeScript design patterns. Today we are going to focus on the prototype pattern, which when we look at the definition is actually a very basic and simple pattern at the first glance. So you specify a kind of object to create by using a prototypal instance and create new objects by copying this prototype. So where does it come in handy? When you have, for example, a complex object to create and you need several of those instead of recreating new objects every time. You just create a prototypal object first and then you copy that prototype. So even though it looks very basic and simple at the first glance, it might prove a bit more difficult. And the reason for that is that if you copy an object, some of its properties are value properties, value types, and some of these properties are reference types. And how do you copy those reference types? So if you just copy the reference, both objects, both your prototype and the object that you created by cloning the prototype, will have a reference to that same object. If I then change that object, both my prototype and the cloned version will be changed. And that is not what you would like to achieve by creating a clone, by a copy. So you have to be very aware of that fact. So let's say we have a contact prototype and we for a company, and we add in the address of the specific contact. When we clone this object, when the address is a reference type, both types, both objects will have a pointer to the same address. If I would change the address for one of the two objects, then both objects are changed. That's typically not what you would like. So you have to make a decision when you clone an object if you want to create a deep copy or a shallow copy. And that's really something that depends on how you use this clone, this copy of the object. But let's continue with this pattern, describing this pattern. What you see here in the UML diagram, that you just create a prototype, and the prototype has a clone method, and that will create a new clone, a new object based on that prototype. So I also created a sample solution, sample code in TypeScript. Let's head over to that. And what we see here, we have a class, I just called it prototype, and it has a clone method, and it also has a date, a construction date, which is new date, which is just the date when you create the object. So the first thing I'll do in my load of my page, I will just say create a first new prototype, and I set the name to first, and then we display the first. Then I create a clone of the first, and then I display the clone, and I expect to get the exact same results for both the first one.display as for the clone.display. Then I change just the name of just the clone and not from the first object. So when I again display the first object, I expect to have the same result as the first time I displayed the first object. And then when we display the clone again, I expect a different result where the clone has a name of Norbert. So let's look at the results. Scroll down. So what we see here, the output, this is my first object, we display it, and then I find my name is first, and I was modified at Tuesday at a specific time. Then we create a clone of the first one, we display the clone, and indeed its name is first, and also has the same modification date. Then we just set the name of the clone to Norbert, but we first display the first one again. And because we just changed the clone, this change is not reflected to the first object, so I indeed get exactly the same output as I had the first time. Then when I display the clone, I expect the date, the create date, the modified date to be exactly the same, and it still is, and just the name is changed to Norbert. So the prototype is a very simple pattern, but be very aware of deep copy and shallow copy when you create a clone.